I was an agent. I was doing a lot of short sales, and I saw the opportunity because I understood what the banks were thinking because I had to negotiate with the banks for clients on short sales. And I said, I got to get into this investment stuff. So I came across another agent, and instead of being a niche like I was in when I was selling real estate, which was short sales, his niche was working with investors, buying bank-owned property, rehabbing that bank-owned property, and then reselling it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Keeping It Real Estate Show. I'm your co-host, Mike Roeder, and today we have Tim Murphy joining us on the show. And I've known Tim for about 5 years. He owns ground-up development, specializes in high-value new build homes in Minnesota, and I've had just a great time watching what you've done over the past 5 years since I've gotten to know you. And with that, Tim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It is exciting because we have known each other for a while, and I've watched you guys do this podcast. And it's pretty cool to just see the evolution, not only of your business, but also of your podcast play out to just everything you guys are doing.
Definitely. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't you start off by sharing a little bit about your background and what got you into real estate development and real estate investing?
Yeah, so like the catalyst, and I love this because for my backstory, the catalyst really was I was sitting in college. I have a good buddy. There's an apartment investor that owned literally most of Eau Claire, because I went to Eau Claire University in Wisconsin. It felt like they owned all of Eau Claire, and we all rented from them. And my buddy and I, because he knew he wanted to get into commercial real estate. He wanted to get into retail, and he is in retail. And we would be like, man, these guys, they got to be making bank. And him and I would kind of reverse engineer what their business plan was. And it was just crazy because I'll never forget it. We were drinking beers, and I'm like, dude, we're going to crush it in Minneapolis one day and do real estate. And he goes, yeah, we are, aren't we? And so that was one thing that was like the first seed that was planted in my head of real estate, because before that, all I cared about was like hockey and drinking beer. You know what I mean? That was all I cared about. And I was at college. I was getting an MIS degree in computer programming. I wasn't thinking about real estate. But then what happened was then I graduated real estate. I was stuck in my parents' basement because I was broke as a joke right out of college, right? And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I had a bunch of interviews or internships in computer programming, and I just came to the conclusion, like, I cannot sit in a cube. This is not for me. Whether that was like the point where I realized that I was an entrepreneur or not, I don't know. But I just knew like sitting in a cube was not going to work for me. And then I read the book Retire Young, Retire Rich by Robert Kiyosaki. And this is no lie because I've written about this and it's on the internet. I literally consumed that book probably, if it wasn't a full day, it was in 2 days. And it was like it spoke to me. It spoke to me about my entrepreneurial side. It spoke to me about the words you use are the life that you live. And it spoke to me because it told me one of my key things that my grandfather said is work smarter, not harder. And everything in that book was like, real estate is all about working smarter, not harder, because the government wants to help you create housing. And I was like, when I read all that stuff, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And that was 20 years ago, and here I am.
That's amazing. So you knew that was the avenue that you wanted to take. What was the next step? Did you jump right into, buying a single family home and renovating it, or tell us more?
Yeah, Mike, you're going to love this story. So the next step was I had to tell my dad, who paid for my college, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, that I was not going to use my computer programming degree, and at the time they were giving out $60,000 signing bonuses to do real estate programming at whatever job. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to go get my real estate license. My dad's like, "What are you talking about, kid? I just paid for college. You could have skipped college and went right to real estate. What are you doing?" And I said, "Dad, don't worry. I get it." And my future wife, my girlfriend at the time, Sarah, was like, she pulled me aside after I told my dad, and he, about his pants. And he's like, "Dude, what are you doing? This is crazy." And I just said, "Hey, hon, I know that this is taking a chance because it's a 100% commission job." And I said, "But I know I can make it happen. And if I put my mind to anything, just like I didn't even know what a computer was barely, and I got a computer programming degree. So I'm like, if I can do that, I can do anything." And that's always been one of my mantras. If you believe it, you can achieve it. And I feel like I'm proof of that. And so I just said, this is what I'm going to do. And I went and got my real estate license. I started building a house, an $800,000 house with my uncle. And when I was building that house, I said, "Unc, one day I'm building houses like this." And he goes, you know what? Good for you. And to this day, like, he's still around, and he's just like, you called this. Like, he goes, every time he comes through one of my new builds, he's just like, you told me this is what you're going to do, and you did it. And I guess that's my biggest thing that I've learned, is that don't ever sit there and have a dream and not think that it's achievable, no matter how big it is.
No, I absolutely love that. And I love how you found your passion and you went for it. And I think there's a lot of, not only college students out there that struggle with that. What am I going to do? What should I do? But adults as well. Yeah. And if you ever find that passion, try not to let fear step in the way and just jump into it and try to grab that. So congrats on doing that, Tim.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I started a podcast, because I've come across a lot of people that I don't want to say they envy, or I don't want to say they admire, because I don't like those words. That's not how I look at myself. But I do think lots of people want to get into the real estate game because they know the advantages of it. And I think that people are scared or fearful of trying it, or especially they're fearful of leaving that W-2 job and jumping the fence and becoming that entrepreneur, because it's super risky. And one of the things that I've learned becoming an entrepreneur, I do believe that it's in my DNA to be an entrepreneur. I don't think I could work for anybody else. But I think that at the end of the day, when COVID happened, I realized that people thought that they were safe in their W-2 job, and they weren't particularly safe, and they didn't have much control in their W-2 job. What I realized was I had all the control. And everything I had built since 2002, 2003, when I first started real estate after graduating college, until 2020 when COVID hit, all of it came to fruition. And I didn't have to worry about anybody firing me. I didn't have to worry about if I was going to have income coming in. I didn't have to worry about anything, because I had positioned everything to be independent. And that's what is really exciting about being an entrepreneur and also being involved in real estate.
Definitely. And I think, looking back on my career, I was an insurance agent for about a decade, and I slowly phased out of it. And luckily I had a pretty flexible job, but I think there's a lot of individuals out there where you might not have to fully jump out of your W-2 job. You might be able to build up some passive income or build up your business on the side, so that way you feel comfortable taking that leap when the time comes. So I think there's the two avenues there. Let's dive into a little bit more into your business. So you own a construction company, you build high-value homes. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, what type of assets you focus on, and where you're building these homes.
Yeah, so just to get the record straight, I don't own a construction company, but I partner with my business partner, who is Chris, and he owns a construction company, and we partner through two entities. I have a development company called Ground Up Development, which I own. Chris owns our construction company called EHR Construction. We've set that up. There's multiple strategies behind it, from tax perspectives and just a partnership perspective. It is unique. I could go in a whole nother podcast about why I do it that way, but I just want to be for the record. But it is a partnership. So Chris is helping me because he has over 30 years of building experience, and I am helping Chris because as a developer, I am giving him obviously consistent builds, but I'm also out there and I know the market really, really well. And that's one of my biggest skills, is that I'm able to dissect markets. I'm able to see opportunities. I'm able to come up with designs and concepts that we build that are very saleable. And in the beginning, did I know that? No. But over the last, 14 years of doing this infill development and these higher end builds, I can definitely say now today, I'm pretty damn good at it because we consistently sell, and very rarely have I ever lost any money.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit more about that partnership. So I love that he has 30 plus years of development experience. You have a lot of experience in the real estate field, selling homes, building the correct home that people are really going to enjoy. Tell us more how that partnership came together, and I just love hearing that.
Yeah, it's a great story. This is kind of how I got started in the business of flipping, and then which evolved into infill development, which is what I'm doing today. So back when the banks went, belly up in 2008, and you had the big financial crisis where banks basically had a ton of foreclosures. And that was the opposite of what it is today, because there was so much supply, the banks didn't know what to do with it all. So I was an agent. I was doing a lot of short sales, and I saw the opportunity because I understood what the banks were thinking, because I had to negotiate with the banks for clients on short sales. And I said, I got to get into this investment stuff. So I came across another agent, and instead of being a niche like I was in when I was selling real estate, which was short sales, his niche was working with investors, buying bank-owned property, rehabbing that bank-owned property, and then reselling it, which everybody thought, even myself, I'm like, you're crazy. Do you know that houses are losing value every single day? They're not going up in value. He goes, yeah, but it's what you buy it at, not what you sell it at. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. You're right. And he goes, how many people do you think are doing this? This is my buddy Jason. I said, I don't know. He goes, not many, because they're all scared because values are going down. So they don't think that they can buy it right, rehab it, and resell it for a profit. I was like, but you're doing it? He goes, every single day. And so he had two big investors that would put the money into the deals. He would then go out and find the deals. He then orchestrated, and he was doing that this at a little bit of a smaller scale. He was doing a lot of the buying and the listing and selling, but not as much of the rehab, because he's like, I just don't know that game very well. So I said, hey, I want to get involved in this. I want to do my first flip. Can I partner with you? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we partnered with him and then another contractor. And the deal was not great. It was not a great deal, but I didn't care, because my whole goal was I just want to do it. Because I know at the end of the day, if you don't do it, if you don't jump, then you're never going to fly, you know? So at the end of the day, I just wanted to jump. I jumped. We broke even. That was a win for me. It was messy. The contractor situation, he tried to dupe us. My partner and I, the best thing about it is we said, you know what? We're going to do this. Me and you, let's do this. And so we created this partnership with him and I. And so for, I think it was 3 years solid, him and I would go with these investors that we had. We then went out and hunted for new contractors. That's how I met Chris. We then came up with a plan with the designers. So we had 1 or 2 designers. We had, at our peak, we probably had 4 or 5 contractors. We had 2 or 3 big investors, decent sized investors, that they would put the money in the deal. And we went out, and I think within those 3 years, we easily did 200 flips.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and these are small flips. These were little $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, $150,000 houses that we'd flip for $200, $253, no more than $400,000. A lot of stuff in like Brooklyn Park, you know. So it was a lot of like quick, like fast, you know, like do the kitchen, and everything was the same. So it was like a production builder, like you see D.R. Horton or Lennar or these publicly traded builders. That was our process. It was a system. It was no creativity. It was just how fast can we get it done? And so that's how I met Chris, is that Chris became one of our contractors that helped us turn these houses. But then what happened is that the banks quit giving houses away. And so we're all looking at each other going, hey man, we can't steal these banks from, you know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or any of these bank lenders, because they're starting to say, hey, the market's starting to go up. The value, they're not losing their properties, because that's the thing, their assets were losing value every single day. So they had to get rid of it as fast as possible. And we're there to snap it up. But then when they started gaining value, and it was obvious that now you're getting appreciation again, the banks got smart, and then they started overpricing the houses, and the game kind of started to end. That's when we said, hey, what are we going to do, Jason, my partner, and I? And we came to Chris, and we said, Chris, you're our best contractor. What do you think we should do, and how do we pivot? And he said, you know what, we should do infill development. Now, the reason one of the main factors that he decided to do infill development, or Chris proposed infill development, was because Chris absolutely got torched in regular land development and lots and new construction development, because he had the market crash so fast, he had to give away everything. He was literally building houses to sell them to either lose money or to break even. He goes, that was my best strategy, because I had to get rid of all the inventory. Otherwise, if I just sat in the dirt, I was going to lose everything. And luckily, he got out of it. I mean, he didn't get out of it unscathed, but I mean, I saw developers just completely go bankrupt, lose everything. I mean, their marriage, everything. It was bad. It was really bad. So Chris said, you know what, I'm not doing that again, but let's do infill development, where we find great neighborhoods, we take down houses, and we build product. And that's what got me and Chris into infill development, is we started doing that. We started off with an $800,000 house, and I'm going to tell you, when we did that first one, and it was a $250,000 purchase, and I'm used to an $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, maybe $150,000 purchase. We go to a $250,000 purchase, and we're going to tear the house down. I'm like, what? Chris, this is going to be crazy. You know, and then so the next thing is then we, you know, obviously we have to fund the construction, and then we sell it for $800,000, and it worked. And so the second it worked, again, when I did it, Mike, I was sweating for 6 months, literally freaking out. even my wife was like, is this a good idea? What are we doing? You know, because you're paying for all of this. Like, it's just, money just keeps coming out until you finally sell it. And then you get your profit and you get a good check and you make the money. And so when it worked the first time, I would say that's borderline lucky. But if I wouldn't have jumped, I would have never had the chance to be where I am right now. And I mean, you know, right now I have a $2.4 million spec home going. I would never be doing that if I hadn't done all of these other transactions to lead up to the market knowledge, but also the guts to take the leap. And so that's where I'm at today.
I love that you took that leap. And, you know, if you think back, taking that leap is instrumental. You know, you might not hit a home run, and I think people need to realize that. Don't focus in on just projects where you're going to hit an absolute grand slam or a home run. Just get started, jump into the game, and you're going to learn so much. Like that first flip that you did, you know, I'm sure you guys learned a ton, and you broke even on the deal. You stuck a ton of time and energy into that project, and here you are 15, 20 years later. You know, we're sitting in one of your spec homes. I believe this one's about 2.4 million, and it's just a gorgeous house.
Yeah. This house is 1.8, just for the record. The other house that we're building in Edina is the one that we have on spec for 2.4.
Got it. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, I agree. If you're listening to this podcast and you're paying attention to Mike, because I do pay attention to Mike and everything they're doing, I think, you know, investing in real estate, you have to be willing to take that chance. Investing in anything, it's kind of like you have to be willing to take that chance. But what I really think is that I have a buddy who loves to gamble. And he likes to go play poker or 21, blackjack, or he likes to play pull tabs. Pull tabs is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, right? And I'm an investor, so I like to get a return on my money. And I can't play pull tabs. I'm like, I hang out, we have beers. He plays, his daughter plays hockey with my kid. He goes, Murph, aren't you going to play? Everybody else, I go, no, I can't. It's against my DNA because I'm not going to get a return on investment on this. And so my point is that you have to understand risk. And if you can understand the risk, and that's what I believe is my gift, is that I can understand and assess risk. And when I assess risk on these deals, I don't lose on these deals because they're not as risky as you think they are.
No, that makes sense. And I wanted to circle back to another thing that you had said earlier. You were talking about basically the cycle. The market was going down. Everyone was afraid to get in. Values were plummeting. And really, that's when people should be jumping in. That's when they're likely going to get the best return on their investment, like you were mentioning. And I think that same thing is happening today where, you know, especially in multifamily asset prices are down 20 to 35%. That is a huge reduction in price. Whereas single family is a little bit different. So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about, you know, how you view cycles and then also what's going on in the single family space compared to the multifamily space.
I think you nailed it. I'm glad you brought this topic up because I was hoping we talked a little commercial, because my strategy is that I am in residential, but I think that the best way to create cash flow and long-term wealth is commercial. So I agree 110%. I believe 5 years ago when we met, you're like, well, what's your game plan? I said, well, I'm in residential. I know how to make money in residential, but now I want to get into commercial because I see an opportunity coming, and you're dead right. Because what I see is what happened in 2008 that I lived through is that I saw these banks giving money to the commercial sector, and it was like all you needed to have was a pulse. They just wanted to give money away because they wanted to make their commissions. They wanted to make their fees. Everybody's getting fat and happy. But then if rates go up or some lever pulls, they're in trouble. And that's exactly what happened. Rates went up faster than anybody could have imagined, faster than any time in history, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and so we're all going, okay, wait a minute here. We're at 3.25, and we went from 3.25 to 8.25 in what, 18 months?
Right.
So you tell me how intense that is, because I knew for a fact that if that was going to happen or something like that happened, which I just saw the writing on the wall because I saw it in 2008 what happened. It was the same thing when you're giving mortgages to people and all you have to do is take their pulse and you'll give them $400,000, $500,000. My uncle is a classic example. Like, he was a self-employed independent contractor and they gave him whatever he wanted to build this $800,000 house. I'm like, how does that work? And I knew better because I started getting educated on real estate. I'm like, that doesn't add up. And the same thing when I was seeing people get loans on some of these like low cap, crazy over leveraged deals, I'm like, this isn't going to add up. And if those rates go up, we're going to be in trouble. And I would 100% agree. If you go on my social media, my biggest thing that I'm trying to pay attention to, which is hard because I'm not in the commercial game as deep as I am in the residential, is I got to get my money from here to commercial because now is the time to make a move in commercial.
It really is. I mean, if you look at the industry as a whole, commercial real estate, there's about $1 trillion of commercial debt coming due over the next couple of years. And a lot of that has short-term bridge debt on it where, they had interest rates in the 3-4% range. Maybe they had an interest rate cap on it, but they're in hot water because their values have plummeted 20 to 30%. Of that 1.5 trillion, about 100 billion of it is multifamily, but you also have a lot of distress coming down the pipeline in office, retail, some industrial. So there's a ton of opportunity coming out there. And that's, to your point, that's what's happened in 2021 and 2022 is a lot of people put these short-term loans on. They leverage up to the moon, 80 to 90% leverage, plus a lot of buyers did not put interest rate caps on their debt. So they're in hot water right now. And what we're seeing in the industry is a lot of lenders are doing workouts right now, but how long is that going to last until, they're fed up with it and they start to foreclose on these properties? So I do think that there's a lot of opportunity coming down the pipeline.
Again, what I can tell you, Mike, the reason why a lender is willing to do workouts is because their balance sheet isn't as strong as they want it to be. Mm-hmm. If they have a strong balance sheet at the banks, because I learned a ton in 2008 about banking, because I had to, through short sales and how I was able to negotiate short sales and help people avoid foreclosures, through buying deals from the banks and what the banks are looking for and why they're selling at discounts and researching and educating. If a bank's balance sheet is strong, the lender or the borrower is in trouble because the bank will take that asset back, no problem. If the bank's balance sheet is weak, then you have position, and that's why they'll do workouts. But like you said, if you aren't able to figure out your situation, call it multifamily or whatever your situation is, whatever your asset is, and the bank's balance sheet gets strong, just know they're going to take your asset.
No, that makes complete sense. Tim, I'd like to shift over to what do you look for in a multifamily investment opportunity? Yeah. Are there any important features or aspects or, pieces of risk that you're taking a look at?
Well, I'd like to disclose that, I invest with you guys. And there's a reason I invest with you guys. And I think that times have been a little bit tough, right? And I think everybody learns. If you invest in real estate or invest as a passive investor like I invest with you guys, and you don't think there's going to be any risk, then you don't really understand what you're doing. So there's always risk because the market cycles move and shake. And at the end of the day, I know you and we got into a couple deals and we were buying at the top of the market. Now, did we know it was the top of the market? I don't know. That would probably be a better question for you. But you had to be competitive if you wanted to win an asset. So when you're trying to be competitive, that's when people are doing underwriting that they know is risky. They're doing financing that they know is risky. But the alternative is, well, then I just don't buy any assets. And I think that's when people learn the most. And that's what I've learned, getting into multifamily. And it's also what I learned back in 2008 as I bought deals as the market was going down, as values in real estate were going down. What I learned is it what you buy it, it's what you buy it at, not what you sell it at. Yeah. Because I can buy it at a low price and I can rehab it. I can still sell it for a profit. And it's also what product are you putting to the market? I'm putting the best product to the market. I'm not putting just an average product to the market. I learned a ton of different lessons in a very turbulent, risky time. And I think what I'm looking at right now when it comes to multifamily is that I'm looking at someone that really pays attention to the underwriting, because I think this transition will expose so many asset managers on what was their underwriting. Was it too risky? Was it almost gambling? Did they even have their investors' best interest in mind? And then as the pain hits, who are they thinking about first? Are they thinking about their investors? Because I look at it as if you're syndicating and you have 50 investors, that's your family, and you have to look at them as family, but not everybody does. And then, okay, now we have to make a pivot. What is the best pivot? How do you work through all that stuff? And I would tell you, you guys are doing a fantastic job. Of all the adversity that's hit, I think that number one, it proves that you guys do really good underwriting and you're conservative enough. And I think you passed on enough opportunities, but you did take some chances. And you have to take some chances. But on the flip side, and I want to hear your answer to this. This is my opinion as a passive investor. I want your side of this too. But you had to take some chances, otherwise you'd have no assets. I think you guys have for surely learned some significant lessons. And I think that moving forward, into what is going to be a great opportunistic market, I think now you're better prepared to jump on opportunities that maybe are long-term deals, and you're better prepared to really look out for guys like me who are the passive investors that want to get on board with you so that I can have a retirement, I can have cash flow, and I can be more diversified, but also protected because you're always taking care of me.
I appreciate that insight. And, going back to our side, you had mentioned you'd like to hear what we have to say. There's a couple of pieces that we're tuning into very, very closely right now. So first off, delinquency. You're seeing delinquency creep up across the nation because of inflation. It's hard to afford your everyday bills. So we're focusing on projects that have very, very low delinquency. So we know that when we step in the door, these residents are able to afford their rent and what we're looking to push the rent to. The other piece too, which was a huge, huge learning lesson for us, is the debt that you have in place. So back in 2021, 2022, essentially every asset that was being purchased, maybe not every, but pretty close to it, was being purchased with bridge debt, where you were bridging the loan for 2-3 years. You had a floating rate interest rate with a cap, and you were planning on refinancing to fixed debt in the next 2 to 3 years. Well, obviously the Fed raised rates 11 times faster than any point in the last 40 years, and that was a huge hiccup throughout the industry. So now we're really focused on fixed rate debt on our deals, at least a 5-year runway, because when you're looking at commercial real estate or real estate in general, if you have 5, 7, 10 years, to work through any downturn or any hiccups, that just gives you a great runway, and it increases your odds of success substantially. So those are a couple of things that we've really changed over the last couple of years.
When it comes to bridge loans, though, and again, I use all kinds of different financing as well. When it comes to bridge loans, though, I think that there's plenty of guys that use bridge loans for lots of years leading up to the peak. Yep. Would you agree that if you had a crystal ball, or because when you live through a cycle, you can time cycles better. Mm-hmm. And I know that because I lived through this cycle. And then I could time this cycle better. Would you agree, though, that if you realize that where you are in the cycle and it's more definitive to you, that would you use bridge loans again? And then as you get closer to the peak, maybe that's when you avoid using them? Or are you just not going to use a bridge loan altogether because you just know you felt the pain of it in this situation?
So I think that can be a great avenue for some investors. And I think for us, because of the pain that we've seen with bridge loans throughout the industry, we'd be hesitant to put a 3-year bridge loan on with maybe a 1 or 2 year rate cap. Now, there are avenues where you can artificially fix your rate. So let's say you do a 4 or 5 year bridge loan and you have an interest rate cap that's 4 or 5 years. Well, then you have 4 or 5 years of runway, and you've already baked it into your underwriting where you know where your interest rate is going to be. So I think there are different tools that you can use in the bridge space to really mitigate risk and still, increase your success and lower your prepayment penalties and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. Any way you cut it, man, I just want everybody to know that as a passive investor working with your company, I'm happy and I'm proud of how you guys are handling everything.
Thank you, Tim. Well, I appreciate that. And I've been really impressed with what you've been doing on the single family side. These ground up development projects. I've been in a couple of your homes and they're absolutely stunning. Perfection across the board, and that is not easy to do. I'd like to hear a little bit more about, what your clients expect at this level and what you're doing to mitigate risk when you're building these projects.
So number one is we build a lot of homes on spec, meaning that it's a speculative build, meaning we don't have a buyer. And the reason that I have confidence in doing that as the developer, because I'm the one that pretty much makes that call, is that I have 20 years of experience analyzing and researching the market. Now, I'm not going to lie, the market is in my favor, right? We're in a low supply market. If we were in a high supply market, I wouldn't be building spec because there would be too many choices. And again, that was the same thing that was going on when we were in a high supply market. I was buying so low that I was reducing my risk. But the other reason why I kept doing it when the market was going down back in 2008, we were buying these houses so low from the banks, but yet there was so much supply, is that I was bringing the best product to market. Everything that was coming to the market was distressed because people with beautiful homes, they were going to hold tight because they weren't gonna get out of that house, and they didn't see anything they liked, and everything on that market was really distressed. It was a short sale, it was a foreclosure, it was a bank own. And so what I learned is that the product you bring to market and where the market cycle is super important. So right now I'm still building spec, and I've been building spec because we have low supply. The other thing is that the products that we build are based on my market knowledge. Like, for instance, this house is in a dream home, which is a parade of homes, which is an organization that the builders participate with, and they put on this huge marketing campaign, and they drive people through these houses because everybody wants to see a new house. What's the new design trend? What's the new appliance? What's the new light fixtures? What are the new cabinet styles? What's the cool thing? Because I'm going to remodel my house, or, everybody wants to know what's the cool thing in design and in homes. So we drive tons of traffic. Like, we've had this house open for 2 weeks, and we've had probably 500-600 people through the house. And that's exciting because I get to sit in this house and have conversations with people of what does the market want. Every conversation I have gives me market data. And so that market data I take back, and that allows me to build a home on spec, but it also allows me to meet the needs of every consumer. And when you build a spec home, the game is to meet the general needs. You want to create the biggest pool of buyers. Now, it's kind of laughable because when you're building $1.8 and $2 million spec homes, the pool of buyers is pretty small, but your competition is very small. For instance, this house, right now, for builders that have built a home that you can buy like right this second, that's built, because there's a lot of builders or spec builders like me, or just builders in general, that they have models or they have renderings, but they don't have a product that's built that you can buy, that you can walk through. There's only 2 or 3 of these homes that are brand new construction in the market that I'm in, that are for sale, that somebody could buy and close on in 30 days. That's not much inventory, right? And nowadays, what I've learned is that people don't want to go through the build process. They want to buy. I wonder why, because we all have these phones in front of us. Everybody wants that instant gratification. My market knowledge and my market research has taught me is that if you have a fantastic product that meets the needs of the consumer, you have low competition, you're priced right based on comps and all the different market data, you will find a buyer and you will sell houses. That's what we do.
I can relate to that. On the multifamily space, we're getting into areas where we want the primary data like you're getting. What do your residents actually want? You're visiting all the competitive properties, you're polling your residents that you currently have, and that allows you to put together a product that they really enjoy, and your retention goes up, your rents go up, whereas I'm sure that your sales price goes up and the time on market goes down when you're providing a product that everyone really loves. The other thing that I love that you said is you're in a niche where there's not a lot of supply. And again, I can relate to that in multifamily. The projects that we buy where demand is high, occupancy might be 95 to 100% in that submarket, you have such a better chance of creating success with that project. So I love that you mentioned those two aspects.
Yeah.
So let's dive into a little bit about what you foresee coming in the single family space. Obviously, not a lot of supply across the nation, still a lot of demand. What do you see over the next 5 years happening in the single family space, especially the luxury home space that you're in?
Yeah, well, I mean, interest rates, it's funny because when a realtor that works with buyers and sellers, I always tell people it's not the interest rates, it's the payment, because that's the truth. The interest rate could be at 10%, but if your payment is $1,000, or the interest rate could be at 2%, but if your payment's $5,000, which one are you going to take? Because that's what's coming out of your pocket every single day, cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I have to say is that the interest rates, yes, they matter. They matter, and they are impacting the bank's ability to borrow. They're impacting cash flows and making sure that you're cash flow positive. They're impacting the possible resale value. On my side, on the residential, what I'll say is that in the luxury market, my market, so let's call luxury, and I'm in Minnesota. So like luxury in Minnesota is like nothing in California. So if you're in California, you're laughing at this. But luxury in Minnesota, I would say is at, call it 1.1, 1.2 million. And then I would say the higher end, or I don't even want to call it ultra luxury, but the top end where you see very few sales is anything over $2 million. I would say that, in the luxury side, especially as you move past the 1.5 million mark into the 1.8 into the 2 million mark, a lot of cash. So if there's a lot of cash, they don't even care about the interest rates. What they care about is appreciation. What they care about is their asset going to go up in value, because a lot of those people, they look at this and they say, I want to buy in the best locations, because real estate's all about location, location, location. Not only for my family, but I also, when it's time for me to move on, I know that asset's going to be worth more. Now, what's the kicker when it comes to new construction? This is what we say about new construction. If you buy new construction, you want what you want. If you buy existing, you're willing to either upgrade what you see and work with what you have, or you're willing to accept what you can get. But when you buy new construction, you want what you want. And so you're buying because you're getting the top of the line finishes. You're getting the most hip, trendy styles. You're getting probably better floor plans, better layouts. You're getting what you want. And so that was my goal. Again, as a spec builder, is I have to be on the cutting edge of like, what is the best floor plan? What is the most efficient use of space? What is a design trend that people are looking for and that they want to be able to show their guests, their entertainment? Because it's like buying a Ferrari, right? At the end of the day, how many people really need a Ferrari? Not many people need a Ferrari, but it's pretty cool when you pull up to that dinner date and you got a Ferrari and people are like, dang. It's the same thing with a house.
Makes sense. Well, I appreciate that. And before we wrap this up, Tim, a couple more questions for you. First off, for those aspiring new investors out there or seasoned investors, any advice that you have from your experience that you've went through over the last 20 years?
Yeah, I would say, advice or tip number one is that you're going to have to jump off the cliff and it's going to be scary. But if you don't ever jump, you're never going to get to fly. And I would say you would agree to that, coming from a W-2 world, you jumped and you're flying, and it's well worth the chance. My second tip for aspiring new investors would be that once you do take the jump, that really dive into researching the market that you want to be in, whether it's commercial, whether it's retail, whatever it is, and find your niche. I mean, go deep. Like I am in commercial luxury in 3 or 4 different neighborhoods when I build my spec properties. It is ultra deep, ultra niche-y. You're in multifamily. That's niche-y. And you probably even go deeper on your niche. I can't explain that. But go super niche-y because riches are in the niches. And that's the truth. And then the next thing is that if you want to get into real estate investing, and this is what I'm thinking about right now, is that as you've taken the jump, as you've found your niche and you figured out what your game plan is, and then you stack some cash, diversify. I think that if you stay in real estate and you aren't diversified in different areas of real estate, you are susceptible, or diversified in other types of investing if you're an investor like me. Diversification is the number one thing that you have to do to reduce your risk. But here's the thing. This is how I'm going to end this question. Diversification is not what your financial planner tells you. Your financial planner doesn't tell you. They tell you it's diversification, but it's the farthest thing from diversification because all your money is in the stock market, usually in a mutual fund or something, IRA, which is in a mutual fund. That is not diversification. Diversification is different industries. Money in oil, money in gas, money in real estate, money in Bitcoin, money in whatever it might be, but different asset classes. Not diversification because you're in different mutual funds.
I love that. So taking the jump, focus on a niche and really understand the niche, and then diversify. And going back to focusing on the niche, I look back over the last, 10 years that we've been investing in multifamily, and the couple of misses that we've had is because we didn't fully understand that submarket. And that's something we're so in tune with. And anyone that's investing in real estate, whether it be single family or office or multifamily, you got to understand your niche and you got to understand it well. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Tim, any book or podcast recommendations that you have for our guests at all?
Well, I've already recommended one book, right? Retire Young, Retire Rich, Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, that book is fantastic. Here's my thing on Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki, I don't love the guy. I mean, some of the stuff he says is just off the cuff, and I don't like it. But man, some of his first books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Retire Young, Retire Rich, a couple other books I can't think of off the top of my head that he wrote in the beginning. Here's the thing. I love reading books, but books seem so surface level. Kiyosaki in the beginning, he went so deep. And so you literally are learning things, learning how to execute in the book. And so when I'm looking for things that I want to learn from, I'm not looking for surface level theories. I'm looking for execution tips that I can implement into my strategy. So that's what I would say when it comes to books and stuff. I like Robert Kiyosaki. His beginning books, I think, are better than his other books. So if you're going into real estate, that might be a good place to start.
I love that. And Tim, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on social media. #AskMurph. You'll get a lot of my social media. And then I have a podcast called The Value Driven Investor, where I talk about just more residential investing. And then I think, as that podcast evolves, I'm probably going to evolve that into just investing in general, and just basically it's going to be a reflection of my thinking and where I'm going in real estate investing and investing in general. Because that's the one thing, when you've been doing real estate investing and then investing for 20 years, you definitely start seeing yourself diversify into different markets, because you have cash and you can't just put all your cash in one basket. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I think that's where my podcast will go, is to go and talk about investing in general, not just one little niche.
Appreciate you coming on the show. Everyone, make sure to check out Tim's podcast and leave us a rating and review. It helps us bring on phenomenal guests like Tim. So thanks so much for tuning in today.
Thanks, Mike.